this G chord variation, we're going to be using all 4 of our fingers on the 2nd and 3rd fret of the guitar. We're going to have our 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string, and then our 3rd and 4th finger are going to be also on the 3rd fret of the B and the high E string. You'll want to watch out for that 2nd finger because it has to make quite a stretch to get up here on the low E string 3rd fret. And when that happens, you're going to run into the problem of it wanting to lay across that low E string behind it and mute it. So if you run into that problem, just take your whole hand and pick it up a little bit so that your 2nd finger is able to arch itself in and not come in so much at an angle, but more straight on top of that string. Another problem is your 3rd and 4th finger, especially that pinky finger, which is going to be your weakest finger. You may have trouble getting a clean sound from those last 2 strings just from not being able to press down hard enough. So a way to help overcome that, apart from just practicing and building up the muscle in those fingers, is to press on the sweet spot of the fret. So you want to make sure that your 3rd and 4th finger are pressing 3/4 of the way up on that 3rd fret, not in the direct center. If you press on the right spot of that fret, you can get a clean sound with less pressure. This G chord variation is very similar to the first one. The only difference is we're not going to be pressing down on the 3rd fret of the B string. Now you can play this chord with your 1st, 2nd, and 4th finger if you want to, or you can play it with your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger. Now the reason we would do this is because this particular shape fits very well in the C chord family. So if ever you're having to switch to C from G or to G from C, this is going to be a very nice chord to use. So if you watch, if I go from this G to C, you can see that there's a very similar shape between those 2 chords. And so that's just going to help to make transitioning a lot easier within the C chord family. Now for this chord, you'll want to watch out for the 3rd finger because it's coming all the way up to the low E string, and a common problem is going to be that it's going to want to come in at an angle and lay across and mute that A string. So if you're having that problem, just remember to kind of pick your hand up a little bit, press with the tip of your finger, and come in straight down onto that string. Also pay attention to your pinky finger and make sure to press on the sweet spot of the fret so that you can get that clean sound with less pressure. For this G variation, we're going to be doing a bar chord up here on the 3rd fret. We're going to be barring the 3rd fret with our 1st finger, and we're going to be making the E shape with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger. So we're going to have our 2nd finger on the G string 4th fret. Our 3rd finger is going to be on the 5th fret of the A string, and our 4th finger is going to be on the 5th fret of the D string. Make sure when you're making that bar that you're pressing on the sweet spot of that fret and not in the center, because that bar is going to take a lot of pressure to get all 6 strings nice and clean. So you want to make sure that you're on the right spot of the fret. Also pay attention to your pinky, as it's going to tend to want to come in at an angle and mute the G string. So if you run into that problem, just pick your hand up and make sure it's coming straight down onto that string and not coming in at an angle. For this G variation, we're going to be making the D shape with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger on the 7th and 8th fret. So we're going to put our 2nd finger on the 7th fret of the G string. Our 3rd finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the high E string. And our 4th finger is going to be on the 8th fret of the B string. And then we need to take our 1st finger and we need to put it on the 5th fret of the D string. Now this is going to be quite a stretch, but remember that this 1st finger, it doesn't matter if it lays across the G, B, and E string behind it, because all of those strings are being pressed down by your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger in front of your 1st finger. So your 1st finger can get away with laying across the strings behind it. Now remember for this chord that the low E string and the A string are not part of it, so you want to start your strumming on the D string. For this G variation, we're going to be making the C shape with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger on the 8th, 9th, and 10th fret. So we're going to have our 2nd finger on the 8th fret of the B string. Our 3rd finger is going to be on the 9th fret of the D string. And our 4th finger is going to be on the 10th fret of the A string. So right there is our C shape. And now what we need to do is we need to bar the G, B, and E string with our 1st finger. Now you need to keep in mind that the low E string is not part of this chord, so we're going to start our strumming on the A string down. Now a common problem for this chord is that your pinky finger, the base of your pinky finger, is going to want to lay down and mute that high E string. So if you run into that problem, just pick up your hand a little bit to get it away from that high E string. This G chord variation, we're going to be doing a bar all the way up on the 10th fret. And then we're going to be making the A shape with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger on the 12th fret. Now, some people would like to make that A shape with their ring finger instead, and that's totally fine if you'd rather do it that way. Now, if you're using your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger for that A shape, a common problem is going to be fitting those 3 fingers all on that 12th fret, because way up here on the guitar, the frets are smaller. So to get those 3 fingers on 1 fret, you're going to have to turn your hand. That way you can fit them in there. But when you do turn your hand, it's going to make barring the 10th fret a little bit more difficult. You're not going to be able to press on the sweet spot of the fret for every one of these notes. So that just means you're going to have to press down harder for this chord. Now remember, the low E string is not going to be part of this chord, so we're going to start our strumming on the A string.